Look at you, spilling service all over the floor and thinking you belong here. Do you even know whose glass that is?
Ma'am, that's enough. I didn't spill anything. You bumped the tray.
Oh, please. You're lucky to be in the room, sweetheart.
Ma'am, lower your hand. I'm just trying to do my job.
Then do it somewhere
That's
else.
enough.
A white billionaire woman stands in a glittering ballroom, champagne glass raised, pointing at a black waiter while the crowd watches in stunned silence. Her voice cuts through the music. Sing for us, and I'll marry you right here, right now. Laughter erupts, cameras flash. But what she doesn't know, what none of them know, is that the man holding that serving tray isn't just a waiter. He's about to reveal something that will shatter every assumption in that room, expose the ugliness beneath the elegance, and force an entire elite gathering to confront their own complicity in a system they pretend doesn't exist. What happens next will leave you speechless. Marcus Williams had always believed in the dignity of work. At 28, he moved through the grand ballroom of the Rosewood estate with practiced grace, balancing silver trays loaded with champagne flutes and hors d'oeuvres. His white shirt was crisp, his black bow tie perfectly centered, his posture impeccable. To the guests sipping $1,000 bottles of wine beneath crystal chandeliers, he was invisible, just another face in the background of their opulent world. But Marcus wasn't just any waiter. 6 months ago, he'd been Dr. Marcus Williams, an award-winning opera singer who'd performed at Carnegie Hall, La Scala, and the Sydney Opera House. His baritone voice had moved audiences to tears across 3 continents. Critics called him transcendent. His album had gone platinum. He'd been on the cover of Classical Music Today. Then, his mother got sick. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. No insurance, medical bills that climbed faster than he could count. His father had died when Marcus was 12, leaving his mother to raise him alone, working double shifts as a nurse to pay for his music lessons. She'd sacrificed everything so he could chase his dreams. Now, it was his turn to sacrifice. He'd sold his apartment in New York, canceled his European tour, moved back to his hometown of Charleston to be near the hospital where she received treatment. The money from his career was gone, drained by experimental treatments, specialists, medications that cost more per month than most people's annual salary. So, Marcus took the only job he could find that paid immediately, catering for Charleston's elite social events. Tonight's event was the annual Rosewood Charity Gala, hosted by Victoria Ashford Klein, a real estate billionaire whose family had owned half of Charleston since before the Civil War. The ballroom was packed with the city's wealthiest residents, old money, new money, all of it dripping from designer gowns and custom tuxedos. They talked about vacation homes and yacht clubs, while Marcus refilled their glasses and cleared their plates. He didn't mind the work itself. What gnawed at him was the way they looked through him, the way conversation stopped when he approached, then resumed the moment he walked away, as if he were no more significant than a piece of furniture. The casual dismissiveness, the unconscious cruelty of privilege. But he'd learned to keep his head down, smile politely, collect his paycheck. His mother's next treatment was scheduled for Friday, and he was still $3,000 short. So as the evening wore on, Marcus noticed Victoria Ashford Klein holding court near the marble fountain at the center of the ballroom. She was stunning in an off-the-shoulder navy gown, blonde hair swept into an elegant updo, diamonds glittering at her throat. She was laughing too loudly, gesturing too wildly, already several glasses deep into the evening's wine selection. Her circle of admirers laughed at her every joke, hung on her every word. That's what wealth bought you, an audience that never left. Marcus was clearing glasses from a nearby table when he heard it, the thing that would change everything. "Oh, look at him!" Victoria's voice rang out, sharp and theatrical.
Doesn't he look distinguished? Like he should be in the opera or something." Marcus froze, tray in hand. The crowd around Victoria turned to look at him. 20 pairs of eyes, maybe more. Some amused, some curious, some already bored. Victoria took a long sip of champagne, her smile widening. "I mean it! With that face, that posture, wasted on serving drinks." She walked toward him, heels clicking against the marble floor. "Tell me, darling, can you sing?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. This was the moment when he could walk away, pretend he didn't hear her, disappear back into the kitchen. But something in her tone, the mockery barely concealed beneath the sweetness, made him meet her gaze directly. "Yes, ma'am, I can sing." Victoria's eyes lit up with delight. "Well, isn't that perfect?"
Victoria clapped her hands together, and the sound echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. Everyone, listen up!" She swayed slightly, champagne sloshing in her glass. "Our waiter here says he can sing. Isn't that adorable?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not cruel, exactly, but not kind either. The kind of laughter that comes easily to people who've never had to think about what their amusement costs someone else. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. He kept his expression neutral, professional, even as his knuckles went white around the serving tray. "I was just being polite, ma'am. I should get back to work." "Nonsense!" Victoria waved her hand dismissively, nearly spilling her drink. "We're all about supporting talent here, aren't we? That's what this whole gala is for." She turned to her audience with exaggerated sincerity. "Isn't that right? Supporting those less fortunate." Murmurs of agreement, nods, smiles that didn't reach anyone's eyes. Marcus saw where this was going. He'd seen it before, in smaller ways. The jokes that weren't really jokes, the compliments wrapped in condescension, the way people like Victoria Ashford Klein treated acts of basic human decency as grand gestures of charity. But he needed this job. He needed the money. So he stood there, tray still in hand, and waited. Victoria circled him slowly, appraising him like a prize horse at auction. "You know what? I'm feeling generous tonight. This is a charity event, after all, so here's my offer." She paused for dramatic effect, making sure every eye in the room was on her. "You sing for us right here, right now, and if you're any good, I'll give you $10,000. Gasps, excited murmurs. Someone pulled out their phone to record. Marcus's heart hammered in his chest. $10,000. That would cover his mother's next 2 treatments, maybe 3. But he saw the gleam in Victoria's eyes. This wasn't generosity. This was entertainment. "And if you're really good," Victoria continued, her voice rising with theatrical flair, "if you absolutely blow us away, I'll marry you, right here, right now." She threw her arms wide, champagne splashing onto the marble. "A Cinderella story, the waiter and the billionaire. Can you imagine?" The crowd erupted in laughter. Real laughter now, the kind that's meant to be heard, meant to be shared, and to remind everyone that they're part of the joke and he isn't. Marcus felt something crack inside him. Not break. Crack. Like ice under pressure. "Ma'am, I appreciate the offer, but I really should—" "Oh, come on," Victoria pouted, playing to her audience. "Don't be shy. You said you could sing, didn't you? Or were you just lying? Were you just trying to seem more interesting than you are?" She said it lightly, playfully, but the words hit like a slap. The room fell silent, waiting. Marcus looked around at the faces watching him. Some were amused, some were uncomfortable but said nothing. A few looked away, suddenly fascinated by their drinks. In the back, near the kitchen doors, he saw his supervisor, a nervous white man in his 50s, making frantic cutting gestures across his throat. "Don't engage, just walk away. Keep your job." But Marcus thought about his mother lying in that hospital bed, tubes running from her arms, her once strong voice reduced to a whisper. He thought about every medical bill stacked on his kitchen counter,
every job application rejected, every door closed in his face. And he thought about Victoria Ashford Klein, who would wake up tomorrow in her mansion, laugh about this story over brunch, and never think about him again. "All right," Marcus said quietly, "I'll sing." The crowd erupted in applause, excited now, their phones out, ready to capture the spectacle. Victoria clapped her hands in delight. "Wonderful! This is going to be amazing! What are you going to sing for us? Something jazzy? Something, I don't know, urban?" Marcus set his tray down on the nearest table with deliberate care. When he straightened, something in his posture had changed. The servility was gone. In its place was something older, something forged in concert halls and opera houses, something that reminded everyone in the room that dignity can't be bought or stripped away. It can only be claimed. "I'll sing Nessun Dorma from Puccini's Turandot." A few uncomfortable shuffles in the crowd. That wasn't what they'd expected. They'd wanted something safe, something that confirmed their assumptions. Victoria's smile faltered for just a second before snapping back into place. "How ambitious! All right then, waiter, Marcus, let's hear what you've got." She stepped back, rejoining her circle of friends, all of them waiting for the punchline, the moment that the absurdity of the situation would become clear and they could all go back to their comfortable evening. Marcus closed his eyes. He thought about his mother. He thought about every voice teacher who told him he had a gift. He thought about standing on the stage at Carnegie Hall, looking out at 2,000 people, feeling the music move through him like a force of nature. And then he began to sing. The first note cut through the ballroom like a blade. "Nessun dorma, nessun dorma." His voice, pure, powerful, technically flawless, filled every corner of the room, not amplified, not enhanced, just his voice, trained over decades, honed through thousands of hours of practice, carrying the full weight of one of opera's most demanding arias. The laughter stopped. Phones that had been held up for mockery now recorded in stunned silence. Marcus sang like he was back on stage, like this wasn't a ballroom full of people who'd tried to humiliate him, but an audience that had paid to hear greatness. His voice soared through the aria's impossibly high notes, dropped into its resonant lows, carried the emotional weight of the piece with perfect control and devastating power. "Tu pure, o principessa, nella tua fredda stanza." He sang about a princess locked in her cold room, watching the stars that trembled with love and hope. He sang with a clarity and passion that made people's eyes sting with tears they didn't understand. Victoria's face had gone pale. Her champagne glass hung forgotten in her hand. Around the room, the expressions shifted from amusement to shock to something like shame. Some looked away, unable to meet his eyes. Others stared transfixed, realizing they were witnessing something extraordinary, and realizing too late that they'd tried to turn it into a joke. Marcus reached the aria's climax, his voice rising impossibly high, impossibly strong. "Vincerò! Vincerò! Vincerò!" The final note hung in the air like a declaration of war. Then, silence. Complete, absolute silence. Marcus opened his eyes and looked directly at Victoria Ashford Klein. She was frozen, her face a mask of conflicting emotions, embarrassment, anger, disbelief, something that might have been recognition of her own cruelty if she'd been capable of such self-awareness. "So," Marcus said quietly, his voice steady in the crushing silence, "do I get the $10,000, or should we start planning the wedding?" That's when the police officer who'd been stationed near the entrance stepped forward, hand on his radio, his expression hard. "Sir, I'm going to need you to come with me."
The words didn't register at first. Marcus stood there, still catching his breath from the aria, his heart still pounding with the adrenaline of performance, and stared at the officer walking toward him. "I'm sorry? What?" The officer, a white man in his 40s with a military bearing and cold eyes, positioned himself between Marcus and Victoria. I need you to come with me, sir, right now. Around the ballroom, the silence shifted, became dangerous, expectant. Marcus felt the air change, felt the weight of what was happening press down on him like a physical force. I don't understand. I was asked to sing. I sang. I didn't do anything wrong. Miss Ashford Klein has expressed that she feels threatened by your behavior, the officer said, his voice flat and official. We've had complaints about you being aggressive and making her uncomfortable. Aggressive? Marcus's voice rose despite himself. She asked me to perform. Everyone here saw it. They recorded it. Victoria had recovered her composure. She stepped back behind her circle of friends, one hand pressed dramatically to her chest. I was trying to be nice, trying to give him an opportunity, and he got intense. The way he looked at me when he finished singing, it was frightening. That's not, Marcus started, but the officer held up a hand. Sir, I'm not going to ask again. Around the room, phones were still recording, but the narrative had already shifted in the minds of some viewers. They'd seen what they wanted to see, a black man raising his voice at a white woman. That was all it took. Context didn't matter. The humiliation that preceded it didn't matter. The setup, the mockery, the cruelty, it all evaporated in the face of the only story people like Victoria knew how to tell. This is insane, Marcus said, his voice tight with controlled fury. You all saw what happened. You saw her make me perform like a trained animal for your entertainment, and now I'm being removed because I made her uncomfortable? A few people shifted, uncomfortable, but no one spoke up. No one said a word. That was the worst part. Not Victoria's cruelty, he'd expected that. Not the officer's complicity, he'd seen that before. It was the silence of everyone else. The people who knew this was wrong, who'd watched it unfold, who'd recorded every second of the humiliation, and who now stood mute because speaking up would cost them something, would make them uncomfortable, would force them to choose a side. I have a mother in the hospital, and he hated how his voice cracked. Stage 4 cancer. I took this job to pay for her treatment. That's all I'm doing here, working to take care of my mother. And you're removing me because I sang too well? Because I didn't stay in my place? The officer's hand moved to his belt, not the gun, not yet, but the handcuffs. Sir, last warning. Marcus felt something break inside him. Not his spirit. You can't break what's been forged in survival, but something else. Some remaining belief that dignity and excellence would be enough, that if he just did everything right, worked hard enough, was good enough, talented enough, it would matter. But it didn't matter. It had never mattered. He was a black man in a white space, and that was the beginning and end of the story they would tell. Fine, Marcus said quietly. He raised his hands slowly, palms out, making sure every movement was visible and non-threatening. I'll leave, but I want everyone here to remember this. Remember that you asked me to perform, that you laughed while you did it, that you thought humiliating me was entertainment, and when I showed you who I really was, you had me removed. He turned to Victoria, who was watching with her arm linked through one of her friends, her earlier bravado replaced by careful victimhood. You asked me what I would sing. That aria, Nessun Dorna. It's about a princess who's issued a cruel challenge. She thinks she's untouchable, thinks her power makes her invincible. The aria ends with Vincerò, I will win, not because of mercy or luck, but because truth has its own power. You might have me removed from this room, Miss Ashford Klein, but you can't remove what just happened. Every person here with a phone recorded it. The internet doesn't forget, and neither do I. The officer took Marcus's arm, not roughly, but firmly, guiding him toward the exit. As they walked through the ballroom, past the silent crowd, past the crystal chandeliers and marble columns, and all the trappings of wealth that suddenly seemed hollow and cold, Marcus held his head high. The last thing he saw before the ballroom doors closed was Victoria Ashford Klein, champagne glass trembling in her hand, realizing she'd created something she couldn't control.
The video went viral within 3 hours. Not the ending Victoria wanted, not the narrative of a threatening employee removed from an event, but the full video. The mockery, the "sing and I'll marry you" comment, Victoria's laughter, the crowd's complicity, and then Marcus's performance. Every note perfect, every moment of transcendent artistry captured in high definition from a dozen angles. By morning, it had 15 million views. By that evening, it was on every major news network. The headlines wrote themselves. Billionaire mocks black waiter, gets schooled by opera star. Viral video exposes casual racism at Charleston Gala. Who is Marcus Williams, the waiter who sang his way into our hearts? But that wasn't the whole story. The whole story was Marcus, sitting in his small apartment at 2 a.m., watching his phone blow up with messages from people around the world. Job offers, interview requests, a GoFundMe that had already raised over $2 million for his mother's treatment, record labels, opera houses, Carnegie Hall reaching out to reinstate his performance contract. The whole story was Victoria Ashford Klein issuing a carefully crafted apology written by her PR team, claiming she'd been taken out of context and misunderstood, watching her real estate empire hemorrhage clients and partnerships, major brands dropping sponsorships, charity organizations refusing her donations, her name, once synonymous with prestige, now synonymous with privilege's ugliest face. The whole story was the officer who'd removed Marcus from the ballroom, placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into why he'd threatened arrest without cause, without complaint, without any actual disruption beyond a black man being too talented in the wrong place. But even more than that, the whole story was the conversation the video started. In living rooms and classrooms, boardrooms and break rooms, people talked about what they'd witnessed. Some dismissed it as an isolated incident, an anomaly, but others, millions of others, recognized it immediately. They lived it. They'd watched it happen to friends, to family members, to themselves. The mockery disguised as opportunity, the expectation that they should be grateful for scraps, the way excellence is treated as surprising, threatening, or somehow inappropriate when it comes from someone society has decided should remain invisible. The way the rules change the moment you refuse to play the role assigned to you. Marcus's mother watched the video from her hospital bed, tears streaming down her face, equally proud and heartbroken that her son's talent had to be validated through humiliation. "Baby, you sang like an angel," she told him when he visited. Her voice was weak, but her eyes were fierce. "But you shouldn't have had to prove yourself to people like that. You shouldn't have had to earn your dignity." "I know, Mom," said Marcus, holding her hand. "But maybe that's the point. Maybe the performance wasn't for them. Maybe it was for everyone watching who's been told they're not enough, that they should stay small, stay quiet, stay grateful for whatever scraps get thrown their way." His mother squeezed his hand. "Your father would have been so proud." 3 weeks later, Marcus stood on the stage at the Kennedy Center for a benefit concert organized in his honor. The proceeds, over $5 million, would fund free cancer treatment for families who couldn't afford it, a program named in his mother's honor. Before he sang, he addressed the audience. "3 weeks ago, I was asked to perform as a joke, to sing for the amusement of people who saw me as less than human. What they didn't understand is that art doesn't care about your bank account or your social status or the color of your skin. Art is the great equalizer. When I sing, I'm not a waiter or a victim or a viral moment. I'm a human being expressing the fullest extent of what I'm capable of, and no one can take that away from me." The performance that followed was transcendent. Critics called it career-defining, but Marcus knew the truth. He'd sung just as well in that ballroom. The difference wasn't his voice. It was that this time, people were finally ready to listen. Victoria Ashford Klein watched the concert from her mansion, alone,
as her former friends attended the event she'd been publicly uninvited from. She would recover eventually. People like her always do. Wealth is a powerful insulator from consequences. But her name would forever be attached to this moment. A cautionary tale, a meme, a reminder. As for Marcus, he continued performing, but he never forgot where he came from. Every concert included free tickets for service workers, for families struggling to make ends meet, for people who'd been told that spaces like opera houses and concert halls weren't meant for them. Because that night in the ballroom taught him something crucial. The system doesn't change because people in power suddenly develop compassion. It changes because people refuse to stay invisible. Because someone stands up and says, "I will not shrink. I will not be silent. I will not let you decide my worth." Vincetto, I will win.